out, and away we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to F1 True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. I'm back here with Drew and Ed, and goddamn, boys, it is Tuesday, June 4th, and this has already been a week. Lots of news to cover, lots to go through. Let's talk about the announcement that came out just hours ago. Checo, Red Bull, another couple of years, multi-year deal. How did they phrase it?
1+1.
One plus one. All right. Any surprises here with this announcement, either with the signing or with the timing?
I mean, I would say foot and mouth for this one for me, because I kept on saying at the end of last season that Checo is out. I started the season, Checo is okay, but we'll see what happens. But my thing is Checo is out. And man, was I wrong. I think with what Red Bull is doing right now is they want a little bit more of consistency. They don't want to rock the boat that is Max Verstappen because of their issues with engineering, their issues with how the car is performing. So I think it's a good move. In essence, I think that with Checo in play, he would love to be in a car that competes 2025, 2026 when the new regulations come in. You know how Red Bull is preparing for that as well. So good for Red Bull, good for Checo. I mean, good for everyone. But yeah, I'm going to eat my words on that one. How about you, Drew?
I think that Red Bull has successfully got his cake and is able to eat it too. I think signing him on a 1+1 was an absolutely brilliant business idea because they get Checo till the end of the regs. I would argue that there's nobody on the grid or someone that they can guarantee that would fill that seat for next year that would satisfy them in terms of a good second place. You got somebody like Liam Lawson, you got Yuki Tsunoda, you got Danny Ricciardo. These were all talks to have this second seat. I don't think any of them are a guaranteed thing, and I think Checo is the closest to the guaranteed thing. Signing him for the 1+1 so that they have an option to dump him should somebody else get into that V-carb seat, or Liam Lawson does something awesome and somehow works his way in for the new regulations, or there's another superstar that becomes available. I think Red Bull has put themselves in an absolutely perfect situation in order to be successful, not only until the end of these regs, but to put themselves in an open book in terms of who's going to fill that seat for 2026. So hats off to Christian Horner or Helmut Marko, whoever was involved in those decisions, because you got everything. You got everything you wanted.
Do we know if the +1 is a team option or a driver option? Who's the option on that?
I think Red Bull holds all the cards in this scenario. I'm going to assume that it's a Red Bull option, not a Checo option, because then it would just be a 2-year deal.
Yeah, Ed, you bring up a good point. And Drew, that's a good point. That's a dumbass question on my part. Ed, so you were talking about not rocking the boat at Red Bull. And I think that's a very interesting point to bring up, that I feel like everyone's maybe walking a little bit on eggshells with Max right now. Obviously, he's like the golden boy. He's the most winningest driver over the last few years, and his displeasure with the team seems to be at a recent all-time high. We've heard lots of complaints about the cars over the radio. There's reports coming out where he hasn't been happy with the simulator back at the factory for a couple of years. And I feel like in Formula One, it's one of those things where it rains, it pours. You just get all these stories coming out about everything. When things start going a little bit tough, people start leaking things, making comments off on the side. So I think Checo, to both of your points, is that it's a safe choice. Max knows him. Max understands there's a very clear hierarchy in the team with that. And he is a solid number 2. The other interesting thing I was reading today after this came out was how apparently cash-strapped Red Bull is from a budgetary standpoint. And they really, really rely on the money that Checo brings with him. And we talk about what is the Mexican telco? What's the company? Telcel, something like that.
Yeah, Telcel.
I always accompanied Checo with that sponsor, but they were listing off 4 or 5 sponsors that he brings with him. So I don't think his financial impact on the team is insignificant at all. But, it's a solid choice. I agree with everything you guys said. He's having an okay season. I think he got some shit luck, shit end of a Magnussen stick last race, and which took him out. Although realistically, he wasn't going to do anything from back in the field anyways. But solid signing, safe, not rocking the boat.
Well, if he's
keeping the
bringing
lights on.
a bunch of sponsors, he just burnt, according to Helmut Marko, about $2.5-3 million on that last crash. So he better be bringing some sponsors if you want to be getting into shunts like that, buddy.
Maybe that was that's how we got coursed into the +1. Maybe he was aiming for the 2, and they're like, "Well, you just totaled the car, so you got to pay up now. This is it. Work with us here." So that was the one big piece of news that came out today, hours ago. Yesterday, we had a different story on the other end of the contract spectrum, and that is that Ocon is going to be without one at the end of this season. He was coming into the end of his 5-year. Was it 5 years that he was with Alpine now?
I think it's 5 years.
I think it was 3. So 3? 5 years in total, maybe separate contracts, but I believe it was 5 years in total. Coming to the end of his contract, doesn't look like he's getting re-signed. Again, he had the big incident with Gasly in Monaco, but apparently he was aware of this prior to the race. Reactions, thoughts, Drew?
I think that's quite evident that he knew he was going to get canned before that race because he had nothing to lose. I kind of get this, like, when you're in high school and you're with your girlfriend and you guys are going to break up and you just kind of want to be like, well, I don't want to be the guy breaking up with you, and I don't want you telling people that you broke up with me. So let's just say it was a mutual agreement. Kind of getting one of those vibes because I think realistically, Alpine canned the dude. I think he's good. He'll never be a great. I think he got a little bit of a short end of a stick in terms of his career. I think if he got into a top running team, I think he absolutely could have been, a really good, maybe even potentially better than a Valtteri Bottas. You know what I mean? Like a really good number 2 who won a lot of races just because of circumstances. And I think that kind of been his career. But, luck is what it is. But he was never really kind to any of his teammates. Him and Fernando Alonso never got into it, and him and Pierre Gasly, they've never been a team pairing that worked together at all. And I think Alpine knew that going into it, but realistically, like when you have things like this happen with a works team that needs to be scoring points, that deserves and should be scoring points, and is arguably at least at the beginning of the year, was the slowest car on the grid. There's obviously frustrations that are involved, and Alpine, especially their top brass, like they're notorious for just firing people immediately. Do I think Esteban deserved to get canned? I don't think so. But he's also not making any friends along the way in terms of being in a really good position to get picked up by another team, right? Because we can go through the laundry list of places that he could land. I think there was some points where I even wanted him to be at the second Mercedes seat. Then you get, then is there an option for him to be at Red Bull when we didn't know about Checo? Also, can we just do a quick segue here and talk about how unreal Red Bull's PR department is? Once Ocon got canned, immediately they put up this post that's like, dum, dum, dum. Oh, stay tuned. We got big news. And it's like everyone in the F1 world thought it's like, oh, is Esty Bestie going over to Red Bull? Anyways, back on track. I just think that, Esteban never really played nice with anyone that he needed to. And I think it's going to shortchange him in terms of the length of his career. I think there's a lot of doors that are open right now to drivers, especially of his caliber. And I don't know if they're going to be open to him. Like he's going to have to really jump back to I know he was talking to James Vowles. James Vowles is talking to everybody right now. That guy's a pit lane slutty slut. So he's he's just, I don't know. He's not in a great spot right now. If I know that one of these vets has to be off the grid next year, I would argue Esteban could be the guy. It would be him or Hulk. And I think Esteban's a better driver than Hulk, but I think Hulk has a better PR record in terms of being a team player, especially this year in a big way. What do you got on that one, Ed?
Well, isn't Hulk? Doesn't he have signing already for the Audi? But when are they starting?
He signed for next year though.
I lied.
He's in.
I meant K-Mag. The entire time I
Oh,
said
okay.
Hulk, I meant
Oh, my bad. It's like I kind of got confused there for a second. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, no. I'm with you there. No, and totally agree on that end because, like, I mean, right now, I mean, not necessarily like evil or not necessarily bad, but these are the guys that are like are always elbows out when they're racing. Like K-Mag's the same way, Ocon's the same way, but the worst thing about Ocon is that he is actually elbows out with his teammates. So that's, I mean, we've had multiple instances in the past wherein teammates are always competing with each other, but they're competing with each other. The team right now is at the very bottom of the totem pole. Like, you need to kind of like work together in order to get maximum points as a driver, as constructors. And that's probably going to be the crux in Ocon's career when it comes to moving forward post 2024. Because if you have a difficult driver, just like Prost back in the day, if they keep on blaming the car, they keep on blaming the teammates, they keep on blaming engineering, what's going to happen? They're going to get exiled, excommunicated from the actual sport. Because at this point, what is he actually bringing to the sport? He doesn't come from money. He probably has a bit of sponsorships, bringing in a little bit of money into it. But Alpine is a works team. That's probably why they make a decision on that end. Other teams are going to be thinking of the exact same thing. And I doubt that he's going to be in any of the front runner teams. It's going to be the mid tier to the bottom teams. And probably they won't even like it because Alpine's at the bottom and he's acting like that. What more when they actually get into really competing? Not really the case at this point. So I feel bad for Ocon. He is a fantastic driver. He's won a few races. He's a very, very skilled driver in terms of like having elbows out in every corner, trying to get any place he can get, as scrappy as he is. You got to play your cards right if you want to stay in the sport. Walker?
I'm torn on this one. You know, on one hand, he always seems like he's driving with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, right? I'm not sure if that's because, you know, he doesn't come from an affluent family. Like a lot of these drivers, they come from like wealthy families and, you know, they can pay their way through at least to fund the progress, right? He didn't come from that. And I don't know where this chip comes from. Maybe it's just for always having to scrap, always having to fight for whether it's sponsorships or seats or whatever it is, or, you know, kind of getting where he's gotten on merit. So, you know, I can appreciate that side of the hustle and that side of like becoming the driver he is today and getting to where he is today. Because I don't think you can get to that level without being a little scrappy, being determined and things like that. You know, we look at drivers like Max, for example, and even Lewis in his earlier days, and they were scrappy guys, right? They put their elbows out, they drove tough. The difference was that they were winning. And I feel like when you are winning, all of a sudden you get a little bit more leniency from the team, from the rest of the field, from Formula One as a organization itself, in terms of like what you can kind of get away with. And Ocon hasn't had those same opportunities to win. Is he a talented driver? I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know if he really rises above a lot of the other drivers on the field. And I think given the opportunities that he's had in the past, you know, being with a works team, being with a team like Alpine, where, you know, there is money, there's infrastructure traditionally, right? They have a competitive car. You know, you don't waste that opportunity driving like you are at a startup like Haas or something like that, where you're just fighting for everything, because there's more to being a driver at a works team than scrapping out for every single point you can, especially when you have teammates like Alonso, Ricardo, Gasly. So I don't know how. I feel like he's almost made his own bed in this case, which I think is what a lot of you had been saying. And I'm looking at the list of available drivers, and there are some solid drivers available for next year. Both drivers that are currently on the grid, drivers that are not on the grid. Quick list is so unsigned, mind you. You have Gasly, you have Tsunoda, you have Ricciardo, you have Magnussen, you have Lawson available, you have Bottas, you have Sainz, which we haven't talked about in a couple of weeks, but he's still floating out there. Antonelli, you got Schumacher, you have all these drivers for a fairly limited number of spots. And as of today, I don't know who Ocon outdrives on that list. Maybe Magnussen, maybe, I'm not really sure, but
Bottas.
it's gonna be tough. But you know what? I'm going to talk about Bottas in a second. But where does I don't know if he has a spot next year given the available drivers.
I agree. That's the thing, and that's why I mentioned that. Like, if I looked at who the drivers was, like, if there's a vet that's got to come off the grid, I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. I don't know if he's the guy.
And let's talk about Bottas for a second. Because I feel like he's been a little bit forgotten in this driver's market. He's very quietly running gravel races, doing his thing, being a social media darling. He's got the hair, he's got the look, he's got everything. And I feel like we hear very little about him on the driver's market for a contract for next year. And let's not forget, Valtteri Bottas is the fourth most winningest driver on the grid right now, behind Lewis, Alonso, and Max. Bottas has 10 wins, two more than Daniel, and people give Daniel way more credit, in my opinion, and many more chances, perhaps, than Valtteri gets. So, was he just coasting off a good Mercedes car, and now he's just kind of meh, or does he deserve like a little bit more respect and a little bit more?
No, I think you nailed it, man. Like, I think, situationally, that Mercedes car was in its most dominant era. And if you look at someone like Danny Rick, when he was at Red Bull winning those races, like, that was a good car, but it wasn't the domination that Mercedes, what was it, W13 or W12 or whatever. I just don't think that was, I don't think you can do apples to apples on that. I think that's a different ball game. And I think situationally, Bottas was in the best spot. I would argue, if you want to compare it to anybody, you'd be comparing him to Checo, because Checo had a dominant car, and didn't take advantage of it. Do I think Checo or Bottas? That one's, in my opinion, if you look at the numbers, that's an easy Bottas over Checo, because he took that opportunity, the same one that I would say Bottas and Checo had, and ran with it and actually pulled out. Right. So I don't know. That's just where I see him. I love Bottas. Obviously, like, when I first started watching F1, Lewis was winning. I jumped on the bandwagon. Bottas was a great second place. I got all the way in on Bottas. He's a funny guy. He knows his role. He's a great driver. He's consistent. Whenever Lewis had a misstep in any way, he was there to take the positions. But Bottas is a fun guy, but I don't know if he's a fun driver to watch. He's not exciting. I don't get wowed by him. And unfortunately, that's where Danny Rick comes in. And I think that he is fun, and he is a little louder, and he's more of an entertainment piece. And, like, ultimately, I want to watch F1 because I want to be entertained. I don't know. That's me.
I mean, I'm with you there. But I think Bottas is in the time of his career wherein I've done all the winning I want. I still want to drive. I'm working with what I have right now, because, like, the Steak Sauber, whatever you call it, team, Kick Sauber, whatever, they're not really that competitive, but he has a drive. I mean, at the end of the day, like, if I were in his shoes, I'd probably do the exact same thing. I'm still able to drive, I'm still able to compete, and still able to, make bank and have fun at the same time. I mean, only time will tell when I don't have a seat anymore. But to Drew's point, yes, this is supposed to be entertaining. This is supposed to be, a competition. And if you're just there to kind of like, coast along. I think moving forward, when Steak Sauber turns into Audi, he won't have a spot there anymore. And I don't think any other team would want to, pick him up. But again, could also be from here on out, like maybe he'd push a little bit more, elbows out a little bit more, try to get more points and prove to the other teams that, hey, take a chance on me because I've had a lot of wins and I can still compete. So we'll see what happens in the next few races.
Let me ask you guys this question then. Just quickly, you are a mid-pack team. You already have a driver. Let's say that driver is, let's pick someone off the grid, Kimi Antonelli. And you have a choice for your second seat to either be Esteban Ocon or Valtteri Bottas. Who are you going with?
Bottas.
Oh, Bottas all day.
All day.
There we go. So Esty is not the bestie anymore. He's Audi.
I love that.
Was Esty ever the bestie?
Well, maybe the bestie out of two, When you got a short list, you could be the bestie,
Yeah, we'll see. So I just did a quick count. So there are 9 seats still open on the grid for next year. So still a lot of uncertainty. Obviously, Sainz tops the list. There's been talk about him at Williams over the last couple of years or over the next 2 years, which would be an interesting fit. But then we're going down that list. And again, lots of drivers still need a seat for next year. We'll see. I think I'd love to see Bottas in there. I don't know, you're saying that you're talking about how you don't know if he's just content with his wins and he's just kind of coasting. I don't know. When you're at this level, do you get content with your wins and do you coast? Like, are there any coasters out there? Or are you always hungry? And then when you're not, it's time to like call it. Like there are people that don't do very well, but that's different than
coasting.
Not having like the fire to really want to win, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Like even when I'm thinking about somebody like I don't know, like Kimi,
Mm-hmm.
He at the end of his career, like was he coasting? I don't know. I think he was just having fun and like I don't know if his heart was in it. And if he was just collecting a check at the end of the last season there, you know what I mean? But I think, mentally he had already checked out. He, announced his retirement or whatever from F1 at that point. But, I just think that I think inherently you're right. Like these guys are winners. They're winners and like coming anything but second or first place is no bueno in a big way. And so obviously you got to play the hand you're dealt in terms of what car you're in. And so like somebody like Valtteri Bottas at Kick Sauber knows exactly where he is on the totem pole. But getting 10th place for him is a W. That's a win. Right. And it's the same thing with Alpine at this point, right? Like so they just have to readjust what a win means to them. Right. And outperforming your teammate, that's a win. Right. So that's kind of how I see it in that.
So I just have to laugh. I have to point this out. I'm looking at this website where it goes over all the existing contracts and empty seats on all the teams, and you have Mercedes, George, contract until the end of this. They list all the drivers and then contract until the end of or multi-year or whatever it is. And I'm looking at Lance Stroll, and it just says rolling contract.
Yeah.
Which, as long as those checks are getting signed, as long as Papa says it's okay to hop in the seat, hop in the driver's seat. I know, it was pretty funny.
It's funny because I was looking at some of the driver openings, much probably like something that you're looking at, and wherever there was an opening is like a silhouette of a black thing, and then it right beside Alonso is a black silhouette. Like they don't know who's going in there, and I don't know if they're trying to appease us as an audience, being like, "Well, we don't know who we're gonna sign." Like Lance Stroll is never the answer. Lance Stroll is never the answer. I would say
Esteban
everyone
Ocon
but Logan Sargent. This is what I'm saying.
That was my question.
That was where I was going with all this. Is like, at what point do the board of directors make a decision at Aston Martin that like, yes, Papa Stroll, I know this is your company or whatever, but like, it's bad for business, dude. This is a bad bad financial decision. You have two drivers that need to be scoring points on the reg, and he is not.
For the record, I will put this out there. I don't know if I would choose Esteban over Lance.
Wow.
It's not automatic for me. It's not automatic.
Okay. What's that based on? Is it because Esteban's a little bit greasy, or because like you actually think Stroll's a good driver?
I think Esteban hasn't shown me for the last couple of years that he can outdrive Lance. Now, Lance can outcrash Esteban 100%. But can Esteban outrace Lance? TBD. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll find out. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, let me put into context.
But chances are he'll probably have a seat next year and Esteban won't. Yep.
But let me put into context. If all the seats are taken, all the drivers are taken, they've gone somewhere, wherever. And at the end of the day, you have Lance Stroll and Esteban Ocon. They're the only two drivers you have to choose. And they get a seat. Who would you choose?
Esteban all day.
I think we just answered that. I don't know. Who's the teammate?
Because you're right. That's a great
more into context.
Because the teammate matters.
Fernando ain't having no Esteban on his team again.
He will not.
That's not happening.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. That's fair.
Anyways, so lots of news early in the week. Some moves, some no moves, some people out of the job, some people with a job, all sorts of stuff happening. And this is the week leading up to Montreal, our home Grand Prix.
Hey,
very exciting. We are looking forward to this one. What are we looking forward to on this one? There's going to be some upgrades coming in. Apparently, Mercedes is bringing in some new stuff. Weather's not looking so hot, so it might be some rain sessions as well. Lots up in the mix. What are we looking forward to this weekend, Drew?
Yeah, to piggyback on your point, Mercedes is going to be bringing some upgrades. I heard the Stake F1 team is going to be bringing some upgrades. I think Alpine is commented that they've dialed in a few more of their upgrades. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, you mentioned the weather. That's going to play a very big factor. As far as 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 4th, I was looking at the weather, and it's looking like rain in Montreal Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I'm not sure as to when that rain's going to happen. Are we going to have it in free practice? I think they got a lot of data this year in terms of how things are going to operate, assuming it was a dry race. But I think that there's so many variables. Like in one race, if you have wet, dry, wet, the pit stops for the inters, and then pit stops for, I guess they don't really race on wet, but and then to go back to slicks and then back to inters. Like if that ends up being part of the repertoire, there's so many variables that happen. Lando's a huge rain weather guy, and he loves driving in the rain. Well, I don't know if he loves it, but he's real good at it. We'll go that way with it. And Lewis, same thing. Max is pretty dialed in the rain too, but I'm not sure how that RB is going to be over the curbs in the Gilles Villeneuve circuit, because it's a little bit curby, and all things remain equal, and I think if it was a dry weekend, I would have my money on Ferrari this weekend. I think that they're going to be looking real slick. Similar to Monaco, they have the hairpins and stuff like that, and they have the really long straights, but then they also have the chicanes with the slow speed corners. And I think that that's really going to dial in everything that Ferrari's been doing. And assuming that Carlos and Charles do a great job with qualifying, I think they could definitely bring the fight to Red Bull this weekend. I would love to see what McLaren does. I know that they really love to show off in the high-speed corners. This is not the track for them. But, regardless, they were looking real slick in Monaco. And that's not a high-speed corner track anyway. So, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to see what everyone's got going on this weekend. And obviously, it's our home race at Formula One True North. But, I'm pumped. Man, all around.
I like it. For me, it would be, I'm looking forward to McLaren kind of like showing up, which is kind of contrary to what Drew just said. I agree that turn 10, turn 1 and 2, and then turn 6 is going to be a problem for McLaren. But there are lots of straights, lots of high-speed corners, specifically turn 4 and turn 5. And then Casino straight to the Wall of Champions. Hopefully no one hits it, but I doubt it because I think Stroll is going to hit that corner or hit that wall. We all know he loves the wall. But what I'm really looking forward to is how does Red Bull respond to 2 consecutive races that, I mean, not consecutive, rather, Miami and Monaco, that they're kind of like lacking in the speed department, kind of lacking in cornering department. What's happening? So this is a traditional track. This is not a street track. They have high curbs. However, they have a good opportunity to bring it in on the different straights, the high-speed corners, and even the hairpin. So we'll see what happens. They'll probably go back to their low ride height setup, which they're really good at, and this will be a good indicator now to see how Red Bull is going to fare out for the rest of the season. Because if they can't make it on this track, they have problems.
Yeah, I think you guys did a great kind of summary. I'm interested to see how Checo responds in this race. He's had a couple of rough races. He's got a contract now. He's locked in for a couple of years. We're going to see if, this kind of settles him, where he's able to maybe focus a little bit more or proceed with a little bit more confidence, knowing that he's not, walking on glass or driving on glass as it is for this case where, he's so afraid to make a mistake. So I'm excited to see what he brings to it. Again, we touched on it, Ed. We've had 3 different winners over the last 3 races. And when's the last time that happened? It's been a while.
Yeah.
Right? It's been a while. And it's exciting though, right? It brings a lot more intrigue to the race. We're going, I'm not convinced that Max is going to run away with it. Last few weeks we've been doing an over-under on the amount of seconds he's going to be ahead, and he just has not been ahead on any of them at the end of the race. So lots to look forward to. If we are going to throw up some predictions, I know, Drew, you just talked about Ferrari having a strong weekend. What are we feeling? What are we feeling is going to come this weekend if we had to predict the podium? I'm not going to throw out an over-under on Max because I don't think he deserves it at this point.
Not anymore.
We can still place him.
Yeah. I'm going to go with a very similar to Monaco. I'm going to do a Charles. I'm going to do a Max. And then I think we're going to have Carlos. Let's do a Ferrari sandwich.
Okay.
I would say Leclerc, Piastri, Norris.
I'm going to go Lewis, Max, and Lando.
With your upgrades. Look at that.
You know what? I don't know why. I get to be there. I'm very excited to go. I just want to see Lewis win one last time in a Mercedes car. So I'm just putting that out there in the universe. There's absolutely zero reason or logic to my selections, but whatever. We're gonna roll with it anyways.
You'll never know. You're there. You might be the lucky charmer.
Rain, someone will pop a tire.
It's happened before.
Exactly.
It's happened before. Remember how what was that? Jenson Button won a Canadian Grand Prix. I don't exactly know what year it was, but Sebastian Vettel destroyed it on turn 1 on the final lap because it was raining and the race had stopped, and then he turned around, he spun around on turn 1, and then Jensen swooped in right in, and then the last lap he won the race. So it could happen. We'll see. I'm excited.
I love sports. Anything can happen, baby.
Anything can happen. So boys, that's it. We got Montreal coming up. We got some big news this week. We'll wrap it up there for today. Looking forward to doing a full race recap next week. Talk about Montreal. Going to bring back some footage. who knows what we're going to find there, but it's going to be an epic weekend. You guys can live vicariously through me all weekend. I'm happy to live stream everything. But for now, everybody, that has been Formula One True North. Thank you so much for listening. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere podcasts get heard. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, leave a review, join the Discord, and we'll talk to you next week.
Ciao for now.
Ciao, ciao.
It's lights out and away we go.